Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining and welcome to the first session in our webinar series, 5 Lessons Learned in a COVID Classroom, where we will focus on maths and in particular our core maths programme for grades K through to 12 being Reveal Math. This session is going to be led by two excellent speakers and McGraw Hill team members who are part of the National Curriculum Specialist team. So we have DJ West, he is the National Director of Professional Learning for our school group. He's going to be taking you through those all-important 5 lessons that we've learned and we definitely do not want to forget going forward. DJ is then going to hand over to Christy Lafleur. She is the National Curriculum Specialist for Maths. Christy will explain how those 5 lessons can be applied to Reveal Math for you all today. So I will stop sharing and I'll hand over the reins to you, DJ.
Great, thanks, Praveen. And we're going to have a little bit of fun today, I hope, in a really quick session. And we're going to look at, and you know what, in the last year, we've learned a lot of lessons, but particularly we want to look at 5 of those that we don't want to forget. So let me share my screen. And then just jump right over here. So I'm going to take you into this. One of the interesting things about it is the last year of school, and then really coming to the next school year, we don't quite know what it looks like. So school shopping last year for our children was a little bit different. So the things that we've experienced in the last year, all of us had to adapt to. And if you think about it, we adapted to numerous things at the same time. We adapted to remote learning. We adapted to being in a hybrid classroom. We adapted to the materials that we had to use to teach our students because they didn't necessarily have books at home. We had to adapt to the fact that we didn't have as much time with our students face to face as we had previously, even through the use of Zoom. And then all of us as teachers had to become technology problem solvers, troubleshooters, tech support, not only for ourselves, but also for our students. So in that, what I would like to start with is a few basic definitions just to make sure for this session we're on the same page. So I have 5 here that I want to touch on that we'll use throughout the presentation. The first one is synchronous learning. This is anytime you are live with a class or face-to-face as a teacher. It could be all your students, it could be small group, it could be one student. It could be in a classroom, it could be using Zoom, it could be using Teams, Google Hangout, whatever video conferencing tool you want to talk about. But the key with synchronous learning is you are face-to-face with individuals, whether it be one or all of a class. The second one is asynchronous, and these are terms we all learned over the last year. This is learning that happens without the teacher. So you are not face-to-face. Now, it doesn't mean the students aren't. It could be in collaborative student groups. It could be independent. The way we're going to use it in this session, though, is asynchronous work is work done without the teacher that directly relates back to what is being done in the classroom. So in math, if we're teaching quadratic functions, the work they're doing in that asynchronous learning time directly relates to quadratic functions and could come back into our live time. Now, independent learning, and really this is for the purpose of this session, is a type of asynchronous learning, but it's work done individually for a specific student that isn't necessarily on the same topic that you're dealing with right at the moment and is not going to come back into the main synchronous discussion. Now we're going to look at this and talk about why independent work is so important. The next one is remote or distance learning. All of us have experienced that or have heard about it, have had our teachers experience, and that's where all learning is virtual or at home. Now, remote and distance typically have 2 different connotations. Remote is because we have to do it. Distance learning is something students sign up for, like a college distance learning course that we expect to do all remotely because we signed up for that. And then the last one is hybrid learning, and that's a mix of virtual and home. And again, many of us in our schools have experienced this where some students come 2 days, other students come another 2 days, and then everybody's off 1 day during the week. There's every variation of that you can expect. So thinking about those 5 definitions, let's jump into 5 lessons we've learned that we don't want to forget. And the reason the title of this session is because so often in education, we are very, very slow to change. The technology we've been using in our daily lives through Amazon, through Google, we've been very slow to adapt into our classrooms for a variety of reasons, but over time it's been shown that we're slow to adapt. And what we've had in the last year, we've had some hyper change go on because we've had to make that change. And my fear is that we'll go back into our classrooms and we will not take the things that we've learned that are good for our students and use them. We'll revert right back to what we were doing before. Now, there are a ton of these that we could talk about. I'm going to talk about 5 specifically. And the first one I want to hit on is we need to use diagnostic assessment wisely. Now, the reason this has come up during COVID and in the COVID classroom is because we know that because of the remote learning, because of the COVID environment, we know that learning loss has increased. But I want to highlight this: learning loss is not new. If you have 30 students in your classroom, you have 30 students that are on different learning trajectories, and we need to make sure that we can support each one of those students, and diagnostic assessment can help us do that. Because you know what? We don't know. Let's say a student is in upper primary. We don't know what topics or skills or concepts they're missing from lower primary grades that are going to impact what they learn in mathematics in the current grade level. So there are a number of types of diagnostic assessments. So one of the kinds that we actually have in our Reveal Math program, we have a diagnostic that starts out the unit or the module, depending on the grade level you're in. You'll notice in the primary grades, how ready am I? And it's a quick assessment they take before they go into that unit. The digital version of the module pretest on the screen there is from our middle grades, so 7th or 8th grade. And in this, they're doing this quick assessment. Now, the important thing with a diagnostic assessment, this is not on the current material they're going to be working on. It is on the prerequisite skills needed to be successful in the current concepts. That's why it's so important. And that's why it's a learning that we don't want to lose, because as students are entering grades next year, we want to make sure that we understand for each student what concepts or skills they're missing that are prerequisite to the topic that we're getting ready to go into. So there are a variety of these. These are some of the different types of diagnostic assessment. There are screeners that we use at the beginning of the year to actually identify ahead of time what topics they might be missing. Classroom observation can be a diagnostic if they're struggling with a certain topic. In polynomials, it might be because they're missing the ability to divide or add certain kinds of numbers, and we have to understand that. Qualitative data based on performance that student takes in the classroom. A diagnostic test is the one that I just showed you, and a progress measure is something that is given on a regular basis to show student growth. But these diagnostic assessments can support us. Now, if you think about the graph that's on the screen, the teacher gives a diagnostic assessment for what purpose? Number one, to understand the current situation with each student in the classroom, to gain knowledge about how to help those students improve. And then third, to think about required resources that I'm going to need for my students in order for them to be successful in the current topic they're looking at. One other thing to think about when we're talking about this, for so long, my last position in the school system, I was the dean of students. A big part of my job was helping students that had not been successful in the middle grades to be successful in their high school math years. The problem with that is they were missing so many concepts that they were put in Algebra 1, they almost couldn't be successful. So we had to make some adaptations for them. You have students in your classroom that are like this, that if you don't understand the current situation, you don't understand the missing prerequisite skills those students have, and you can't pull the required resources together, then the action is not going to result in improved learning outcomes. And that's the whole point of using a diagnostic assessment. So it does all these things. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but you can take a moment and look at these. I do just want to touch on a couple. Okay. It can point out to students the gaps in their reasoning and misperceptions about subject matter, but it can also point out to you the gaps in students' reasoning and misperception. That in number 3 there, the other one I'll mention, it can help you adjust content and activities to encourage more effective learning. We build all of our programs with support for missing prerequisite skills. So what do I do with it now? Now that I've done the diagnostic, you can do 4 things. If I have 5 students that are missing a precursor concept, I could pull them together in a small group and support them. I could create tutorial or independent work that they could go through. One of the things that Christy probably will show you in reveals, we have a piece called Take Another Look. That is a 15-minute mini lesson that could help students go back and recover pieces. You could use an adaptive solution for a student, or you could involve them in pull-out or intention on the concepts that they're missing in order to help them perform well on grade level content. So let's move on to number 2, which goes directly to this. One of the lessons we learned in a COVID classroom that we need to make sure we carry into next year is we have to focus on the grade level work. We can't, even if I give that diagnostic and they're missing precursor concepts and different students are going to be missing different ones, I can't spend all of the time on the prior grade level content because of what they're going to experience next year. So I need to make sure while I'm doing some of the support on prerequisite skills, I'm also moving into the grade level work. And one of the factors that go along with that is the most important work. So in the US, one of the things we had a group called Achieve the Core did was they actually went into all of the math grade level work and identified what is the most important work that you're doing in that grade level. And the reason they do this and how they define the most important work is there are some standards or work that we cover in our grade level that directly impacts what they're going to do later in the grade level or next year. They identified or did a trace of the skills and content standards and identified which ones are most important. So you're going to notice here with Module 1, Lesson 6, this is optional. Consider having students read, learn, and complete these 2 examples, but we're not going to spend time on this whole lesson because it's a supporting lesson. It's not the core work. Now, one of the things, if you would like to look into this, the priority instruction content in mathematics from Achieve the Core, you could actually look up Achieve the Core priority instructional content. It would take you to their website. Then you could go in and actually look at how they define priority standards for every single grade level. And I know in Europe, you're going to have to make some adjustments based on how the coursework is defined for you, but it is a really good starting point on how they did the work and show you how they focused on grade level work. Number 3, one of the things we've learned this year is the power of digital for both teachers and students. And I hope you've experienced that with your students. There are some great tools that are out there. This is an example of one. This is built into our Reveal Math program. It's an example of a web sketch or using Desmos to actually model mathematics. And when students get to go in and play around with this, they actually start to develop a conceptual understanding of what happens if they change specific things like this quadratic inequality. They can go in, take a look at it, play around with it. When they do that, what happens to it, and experience that conceptual understanding before it's tied to particular materials. But that's not the only power of digital. In digital, this was an example of being able to model something mathematically. But we've also discovered, because we couldn't be on Zoom with the students all the time and they couldn't be together, we've discovered some great collaboration tools. One of the ones I like is called Linowit. And if you look up Linowit online, it'll take you to it. It's a free site. And really what it is, it's a board that you can throw sticky notes on. So as we're doing something, if you have a question as a student, throw a sticky note up there. And students can rearrange those and put them in categories, and you can rearrange them. But it becomes a great way to do that. Padlet is another one we use. Kahoot is another one. Padlet and Linowit can be great collaboration tools. Exploration, so through WebSketch, Desmos, a variety of digital tools, we've been able to do this, and that actually helps students develop conceptual understanding. We've come across a ton of assessment digitally that helps us get instant feedback. Tools for students to do idea generation. So looking and seeing how the ideas reflect. One of the ones I like to use for this is Answer Garden, where students throw up their thoughts And then it actually forms a word cloud, pulling out the most important ideas, and then explaining reasoning and strategies. This is one we have built into our program, a recording feature, but all of us have seen apps like Show Me, that where students can actually go in and record themselves doing a problem and explaining the reasoning. And you as a teacher and other students could then access that, and you can track their thinking based on those digital tools. So one of the things I'd love for you to do is actually throw in your chat, what is one of your favorite tools that you use? And we'll gather these and actually share these out with you to understand that, because you know what? There are a ton of tools out there, and the only way we learn some of those that might impact us is to find out from our colleagues what they're using. But before I leave this, the thing I want to mention about this, the tendency will be when we get the students back in the classroom, face-to-face, brick and mortar, that we will stop using the digital tools the way we've used them in the past. And I want to encourage you, don't do that. Some of these tools offer fantastic opportunities for our students to do every one of the things and more that are on the list in front of you. So let's go to number 4, talking about face-to-face time. The most important thing we need to think about is using that time wisely. Now, if you think about a traditional math class where we had 45 or 50 minutes in a period, we would go in, typically what we would do is bring up the homework from yesterday, maybe ask questions, go over some of the homework. We would then introduce a new concept. We'd talk about that concept. We would have a couple activities for the students to do, and then we would possibly allow them some time to do homework in class to get a start on what we want to see for the next day. And what I want to say to you is, I don't know that all of those things are the best use of that face-to-face time. So what is the best use of that face-to-face time? Well, I don't know that it's allowing them to sit there and do the problems, unless we allowed them to do one and then had a discussion around it. But one of the things we want to make sure that we do in that face-to-face time is that we allow for discourse as a group, and we allow for collaborative discourse as students. So we really want to talk about the math, and we want to do that for 2 reasons. Well, one, the more students talk about the math, the more we can understand their conceptual place with the mathematics. If I'm a teacher listening to them talk about the math, it doesn't take me long to gain an idea of how much they understand, of if they can define that, and then thirdly, where their misconceptions lie. So one of the things we know grows into or interdependently is conceptual understanding and the development of the language of math. And if we don't have students talking about it, they will never develop that mathematical language. You might be saying, well, what do we talk about? Well, some of the things we talk about, how did you do that? How did you solve it? What operations did you use to do that? Where it might get up further, what strategies, and it's actually in the bottom one, what strategy did you use to do that? Can you prove that your answer is right? How do you know it's right? What evidence do you have? What did you start with, and how did you pull the information out? What key word in this problem helped you? So we want to make sure we give time for students to actually be able to discuss and then solidify their understandings, and it allows you the time to guide them in that understanding. So modeling may not be the best use. They can model on their own. You might want to do some flipped classroom material with that. You might want to think about what I'm actually spending the discussion time on in my class. So think about this. This is one we're not going to solve in a 20-minute talk, but the biggest thing I want you to think about, what are the most important things that you could do when you're together with your students, whether it's on a Zoom call or whether it's face-to-face back in your building. But the lesson we want to learn is that face-to-face time is so important. We want to use it for the most important things. And then the last one, number 5, is finding the balance of synchronous, asynchronous, and independent work. And here's what I mean by that. When we think about learning in our COVID classroom, we think about synchronous and asynchronous time. And in those definitions I went over in the beginning, I want to throw in the last one, which is independent time. So think about synchronous. Okay, synchronous time, we're face-to-face, whether it's through a Zoom call or whether it's in person in the building. This is a great time for a small group. It's a great time to activate prior knowledge. It's a great time for reteaching. It's a great time for math discourse. It's a great time for them to be involved in activities together to develop conceptual understanding, and then through math talk and discussion to actually pull that together. That's a great use of synchronous time. And in the last point, we want you to really think about what's most important to do in that face-to-face time. Now, in the asynchronous time, and remember, the way I defined asynchronous time for our discussion is what I'm doing on my own or in small groups without the teacher that relate back to what we're doing in the classroom. A before class videotape lesson, application after, practice, modeling, all of those things are good for that asynchronous. And then finally, independent. And independent is the piece that is not going to come back into the classroom. That's for each individual student. And it's all about filling the gaps and ongoing support and then challenging our advanced students. Okay? That is something that as a teacher, I cannot do for every single one of my students. So I want you to thinking about what independent tools are there to actually support my students in this work. At McGraw Hill, we have several of these products. Typically, they are adaptive products that personalize for the individual student, because again, you as a teacher do not have time to do that. Alex, a phenomenal program, SmartBook, Rise, and Redbird. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in it, but Alex allows you to take an initial assessment. It takes about 30 minutes. Once a student does that, the system identifies exactly what they know, what they don't know, and what they're ready to learn. And the students can work on this independently. It actually creates a learning path for them. You're going to see the broad topics in the course they're currently in. And Alex goes from 3rd grade to actually post-high school. But what you're going to see, each one of these quadrants of this pie represents one of the areas of mathematics. And then as students work through that, they actually fill up their pie, but it only allows them to work on the material that they're ready to do. Rise was another one I mentioned. This is one using that diagnostic assessment. You can identify where students need support, and you can assign out adaptive learning that students are going to do on their own that support the students in recovering those precursor concepts. Again, 3rd through 8th grade could be used with a secondary student that's missing middle grade material. But all of those are sources for independent work. So that balance of synchronous, asynchronous, and independent is so important. So those are 5 lessons we've learned in the COVID classroom. Use diagnostic assessment wisely. Focus on grade level content. Use your face-to-face time wisely. Don't forget the power of technology for both you as a teacher and for your students, and then making that balance of synchronous, asynchronous, and independent work. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Christy, and she's going to talk specifically about how we've done this in our Reveal Math product.
Thanks, DJ. Appreciate it. Yes, so I'm going to share with you some of the key features and key things that you'll see within the Reveal Math product that you can use within this classroom. So as mentioned earlier, know that Reveal Math is a K-12 program, and it really provides a balanced math program. So DJ talked a lot about the synchronous, the asynchronous, the independent learning. We're going to give you that balance so that we can help you blend in a lot of that inquiry, but also some of that traditional learning that you're looking for. And the other key, that FaceTime, making that FaceTime count, is to make sure that one of the hallmarks of this program is that we lead with the students' discourse and their ideas. So I'm going to share with you some of the key things I mean by that. Now, I know that, in this lessons learned from the COVID, we want to talk about the landscape that's also changed. So, some people ask, is this really a print forward or is it a digital forward? It's your choice. You're going to be able to customize and really use that in any environment. Another key is that, especially as the students get older, we know that they use their smartphones. And so with that being said, McGraw Hill has created an app. And within that app, students can go in and do their work, and then it'll sync up whenever they come back to the school. So just excellent resources here that you'll be able to use. So let me share some of those with you that you'll see within the Reveal Math program. one of the keys within Reveal Math is the idea that we want to bring that joy, that curiosity, that wonderment back into the classroom and make math class just as irresistible as some of their other courses and studies that they go to. So what are some things that we can do? Well, each and every module or unit, as DJ said, depending on what grade level you're in, will begin with an Ignite activity, such as the one that I have up here. Let me give you a few seconds to read this. So in the chat, if you might want to share with me what you chose, option 1 or option 2. And as we're seeing those come in, I'm also going to share with you, this is what we call one of those really low floor, high ceiling activities, because I asked this to some of my family members, and I don't even think they really looked at the math, because all they did was say, well, I would do I would do option 2 because I can do that in front of the TV. So as I said, they didn't even look and see, they just knew being in the kitchen or being in the living room to be able to watch TV. So you'll see that, of course, I want to begin to direct students into the mathematics and talk about the factors that they see here, but it also just invites students to the math classroom and to the discourse. So that's one of the key things that we'll see when in there. And I see someone else said that they chose option 2 because I would make the same money, but it would take me less time. Yes, and that's what we want to get students to begin to think about the mathematics there. So great choices within the classroom. So within Reveal Math, whether it's the kindergarten classroom or you're in the Algebra 2 classroom, you'll see a consistent structure of the lesson. We always want to begin with that launch, kind of like that Ignite. We want to spark their curiosity. Then we're going to move into the Explore and Develop. And this is sometimes something that really can be done asynchronously. And I think a lot of teachers, we think about this is whenever we really need to be in face-to-face. But this is where those powers of technology, that web sketch that DJ showed you, the dynamic software there, that allows students to go ahead and tinker with mathematics. And we give students some guiding questions to really help them do that. Then, of course, we want to be that face-to-face time whenever they're really developing the mathematics. We want to give them time to reflect and practice. As always, assessment. We're going to have built-in assessment at the beginning of the units in the module, but also exit tickets throughout, and then being allowed to differentiate. So some of that, whenever you do have some of that great diagnostic assessment throughout the unit, what do I do? What are some activities to do with the small group? What are some things I can do independently? At McGraw Hill, we like to say, you don't have to go be hunters and gatherers. We have all that built in within the Reveal Math program. So let me just share some of that with you. For example, we want to help students really develop that sense of number sense, and we want to be able to have those routines already built in. So you'll see ways to help launch the lesson will be maybe by one of these number routines. This one happens to be Would You Rather, but I'm going to share another one with you that talks about a mystery number. So let's look at this. Use the clues to find the mystery number. The first clue is the mystery number is a 2-digit number with a 4 in it. Thinking of a number? The second clue is the mystery number is greater than 20. You might change part of your mystery number. The mystery number is less than 40. The digits in the ones place is 1 more than the digits in the tens place. Do you know your mystery number? So once again, this would be an excellent time that you could use different strategies if you are asynchronously, such as the waterfall chat. Tell all the students you can't put your mystery number until I say go, and use that particular strategy. or if you are using some FaceTime to do some of these activities to launch, you can always use great whiteboards or different ways to allow students to express their mystery number. Did you get this mystery number? 34. So, as I said, as we move in from the launch, we'll move into the explore and develop. And within the explore and develop, you're going to find ways that you can really guide your students' exploration through learns and dynamic sketchpad activities. Or we're going to give you options if you want that hands-on, if you're making the most of that synchronous time in the classroom and that face-to-face, so that students can really collaborate and talk about the mathematics. Now, what I want to do now is I want to go online. So from here, I'm going to move into the Reveal Math Open Learning Platform. And of course, at the end of this webinar, if you want to learn more about it, there'll definitely be ways that you can contact and get a demo username and password so that you too will be able to use this. The other thing I've learned about these Zoom meetings is that whenever I go online, it tends to go a little slow if I continue with my video. So I'm going to turn off my video for now. And now I am going to share with you some of the key things that DJ talked about. Now, one of the things here is right here, I'm in a middle school course, and this is what we call our dashboard. And just to kind of help myself as the teacher and my students be organized, I have this calendar right here. And within this calendar, you'll see assignments versus lesson materials. So right here, I would talk to my students that whenever they see assignments, this is something that I would want them to do asynchronously or independently. Depending on the student, I could just assign it to one particular student. Then the lesson materials are things that we might be using in class together as an entire class. So that would be one of the first things that you'll see whenever you dive into one of your classes within Reveal Math. Now, you'll also notice that there's great additional resources, plus there as an interactive ebook, our digital e-tools here. And if this is the first time you're visiting our site, please click on this clickable digital tour so that you can go in and see some of the key resources. On the left-hand side of the dashboard, you'll find key folders that include assignments, as well as that all-important assessment folder that DJ mentioned to you about the key pieces in diagnostic assessment. So whenever I go over here into assessment, you'll see not only do I have assessment banks, but I also have my test banks. And your test banks is where you will find those all-important module pretest, as well as the end of unit. And then you'll find some unique pieces called Pull It All Together. And within the Pull It All Together, those are some of the key quizzes, some of our mid-unit quizzes that you'll see embedded in there. Now, of course, all these assessments are editable, and you can go in and customize or create any type of new assessment here as well. I'm going to move back up to my dashboard. And another key here is, where do you want to go? So within this, you'll be able to just browse your course. You'll find great resources at the program overview and program resources, including wonderful professional development from our key contributors. But then this would take you to any particular topic and then any particular lesson. So let's talk a little bit about one of my favorites, slope of a line. So you can see I have this added to my calendar. We talked about the key pieces within a lesson, the launch, the explore and develop, the reflect and practice. So that it's all here, as well as additional resources to support that assessment and differentiation. But one of the best key resources here is that you already have what I like to call my grab and go. And my grab and go resource is my launch presentation. So I'm going to simply click on this. And for example, a while ago, I was doing that mystery number. So that is part of like my grab and go presentation, was going through that. Whenever you saw that slide, click next and next and next. It's already there for you. Here, we're going to talk about slope of the line. So we're going to launch this by sparking students' curiosity by talking about the tallest roller coaster. And what do we think that drop would look like? From here, you'll be able to move from resource to resource and have options to customize this. So now I want to help my students by developing an inquiry question and introducing it with a sketch pad. So I'm going to go in, and you'll see there's directions on how to use the sketch, but I have to share with you about 95% of the time, students will skip those directions and begin just wanting to tinker with the mathematics. So what is our goal here? Our inquiry question is, how can we demonstrate the concept of slope as you travel from one point to another on a coordinate plane? So we want to start at this point right here on our coordinate plane, and we want to move to our target. So right now, our vertical is set at 2, and our horizontal, our rise and our run is set at 2. So let's take a step and see what happens. We can continue on. And do you think we will eventually hit the target? Explain how you would know this. So as I said, this allows students to tinker with the mathematics, and yes, we got it, we hit the target. But what happens if I take different steps? What happens if I change this to a 1? And if I leave this a 2, or maybe do I want to change this to a 1 also? Let's see what happens here whenever I take a step. And as I said, students can begin to see what's maybe the most efficient way to get to the target. Now, as we move through this inquiry question, we're going to continue to help develop the mathematics. So we're going to change our goal, we're going to set different values, and we're going to talk about why did these work? What steps were taken? Of course, sometimes the target's within a different location. We can also talk about the multiple representation to ensure that students not only see it maybe as a graph here, but they could also talk about a chart in key ways. And then we could even move into different quadrants. So as we move forward, we'll see here that how does the target being in quadrant 2 affect your vertical and horizontal values? So once again, just allowing you and your students to develop this concept of slope. Now, this could be done in synchronous learning, but there's also a recording sheet that goes along with this. So this would be an opportunity for students to also do this asynchronously. As we move from the explore activity, we move into the learn. And within the learn, this is where we formalize the activity. So for example, this is something that I probably would do whenever I have some face-to-face time with my students. So I would move through and we would talk about the different ways that slope changes. And you'll see this is what students can see in print, but it becomes a little more interactive whenever we are here digitally. Now I'm going to move through because from the learns, we'll have examples. And then of course, after the examples, you'll see different types of application problems as well as exit tickets. So all key resources embedded right here within what I like to call my grab and go resource of the presentation. I talked a little bit about those e-tools at the dashboard, but also know that these e-tools are what I like to call at point of use, because maybe my students explaining this to me and I need to write down what they're talking about. So I could just go right here and use my draw tool. Of course, I have these tools here, but I can also add different types of tools, such as scientific calculators, fact tables, number lines, but I can move from general tools to algebra tools, geometry tools, number sense tools, statistic and probability, even function tools. So it's all there embedded for you within the resources here for your students. Now, another great thing that DJ talked about is ways to ensure that students are expressing themselves. So he talked about some of the keys is to have that instantaneous responses through our assignments. So for example, I've had some students that have already gone in and taken an assignment. So here I have a quick check. And within that quick check, there's embedded hints, there's key things here. So let's view this score sheet that my students did. And the other key about this is that we can set up options for students. We can set up multiple attempts so that we get their best score here, or we get their first attempt or their last attempt. We can also give students multiple tries, because I like to say that practice makes progress. So whenever I'm giving my students a quick check, I'm really hoping that they're going to get these correctly. So you'll see here, I can see exactly what my student did, the correct answers. I have options to give notes. Of course, there's different types of problems here. And then there's also that one that I wanted to mention, the audio record. So a student can go in, I can ask them a question, and they can audio record and answer that question for me. But then, of course, I can give my students points, write notes, all available here within our entire learning system. The other great thing, of course, is that if you do things digitally, then you'll be able to collect all kinds of great data to inform your instruction. You'll see student activity reports, class activity reports, and I just have to share with you, I received recently an email from a teacher that told me that through Reveal Math and the item analysis report has been a game changer for her and her students, because she no longer has to do guesswork about which problems students maybe didn't understand. Whenever she gets to school in the morning, she can see, and so she knows exactly how to target her review for her classes. Now, as I said, we want to be able to differentiate. So what are some key options that you'll see within our differentiation? There's workstations, there's online practice, and then of course there's great independent practice, so that you can focus on those different students in your class, because some of them may need a little more reinforcement of this particular concept, while there may be others that just need, they've got this, but they just need to build their performance, build their proficiency just a little bit, or maybe even extend their thinking. So let me just share with you one of those examples that DJ mentioned, and that was our digital Take Another Look mini lessons. Now, this is not just a video. It is a 3-part lesson for students. You'll begin with allowing students some explicit modeling, and that is usually a 2 to 3 minute animation, or that will help students model the skill or concept. Now, the nice thing about this is that maybe I used algebra tiles to model something whenever I was doing it in class. And this video, perhaps we would use a number line. Then, of course, step 2 would be that interactive practice. So you'll see a series of engaging activities that will help provide students an immediate feedback and encouragement and confidence within the students. And then, of course, you'll have options to collect a little data. So you'll have a quick 3 to 5 minute assessment that students can go in and collect and see their data. Other keys, of course, we want to help students build proficiency. So you'll see different types of gains. And then you'll see extend activities, such as those rich web sketch activities that really allow students to build through their thinking. So the instructional model: launch, explore and develop, reflect and practice, assess and differentiate. You'll find that throughout each and every model. Another key, though, that I want to share with you that's a game changer within Reveal Math is that we've partnered with Cheryl Toby to target common misconceptions with math pros. So let's look at this. The lesson learning target is that fractions can be compared using multiple different strategies. I have criteria for success that I can describe at least 3 different ways to compare fractions, and I can compare 2 or more fractions. So here is problem number 1. Circle the fraction with the greatest value. If equivalent, circle both. Now, this would be a typical problem here, but notice this second column. Show and or explain how you know. Now within Reveal Math, we're going to show you some students' correct and incorrect work. So let's take a minute and look at this. What do you notice about the various correct responses to these items? Well, I'll share with you that each of these students used a different success strategy. Strategies included using a model, as well as common denominators, and thinking about the size of pieces. I love the fact I just did more pizza. So the way students can relate in keeping it to maybe some of their prerequisite skills that they know. Now let's take a minute and look and see, what do you notice about the various incorrect responses? Yes, we see that each of these students got it wrong, but look, they got it wrong for a different reason, which includes comparing as if it were whole numbers, incorrect use of cross multiplication, which is a whole nother section that can make just a math teacher crazy within that. But within math probes are designed to act. Step one, we're going to analyze the probe so we can then anticipate any student's difficulty. Then step two, we're going to collect and assess students' work to identify patterns in the misconceptions. And then of course, we want to do that step three. We want to take actions so that we can suggest remedies so that students don't continue to make that misconception from unit to unit or year to year. So that's just a few key pieces that I wanted to share with you about Reveal Math. Now, DJ talked about the importance of assessment. And so just know that within all Reveal Math courses, you're just going to see a plethora of different types of assessment, and those are going to be available print or digital. I want to thank you for your time today and your considerations for remote learning within the Reveal Math classroom. So thank you so much. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, DJ and Christy. That was a really great session. What I'll do now is I'll just share my screen. Oh, excuse me. I'll just share my screen and just make reference to our next session, which is running tomorrow. Although I have lost my, bear with me. So this is our session that is running tomorrow with DJ again. So on Wednesday the 28th at the same time, DJ will be taking us through the 5 key lessons tailored to a bit more of a science curriculum with his colleague Jason Marshall, who is the Senior National Science Curriculum Specialist for the school group, and he'll be taking you through the Inspire Science platform, which is a really exciting one as well. So that is happening tomorrow. If you've not registered, go ahead and register. It's going to be a great one. And then just a thank you from us. Thank you for joining the session. Continue to stay connected with us. We've got our LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook handles up there on the screen for you now. If you have any questions, there are 2 places where you can direct them. So you can direct them to your account manager for the UK and Europe, which is Emma Chambers. Her email, all her details are there on the screen at the moment. And our email address, ukschools@mheducation.com. If you've got any pressing questions or queries, please do direct them to that email address and they will be picked up for you. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining. Have a lovely evening and stay safe. Thank you.